What's going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to another episode of Swoop Luke. This is a special episode because I've got the one and only Mick McGuane on, Collingwood legend, premiership player, dual Copeland Trophy winner. Had the pleasure of talking to him for about half an hour. So let's run that intro and jump straight into this interview. Alright, so let's start off. Well, first off, thanks for taking your time out this morning and jumping on the call with me. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
I just want to get into the crux of it all. So at your time with the Pies, you win a premiership in the 4 or so years after you get drafted by them. You go on to win back-to-back Copelands. So what did the Collingwood, or playing in the Collingwood jumper, mean for you?
Oh, everything, to be honest. I was a Collingwood supporter as a kid. So it meant a lot to be given that opportunity way back in probably 1986 to play in the under-19s initially.
Yeah. And
it was incredible that we went on to win the premiership that year as well. You know, the likes of Brownie, Gav Krasiska, guys like Mark Orville, Brett Glary.
Yeah.
We're all a part of that campaign. Jason Kroll was our captain. Keith Burns was our coach. He ingrained a lot of hardness in the playing group, the way he set training up and really push the envelope with a lot of players to test their will and their want to succeed. And it was just great to be a part of a winning formula in '86, and all of a sudden 4 years later, as you rightfully mentioned, to be part of that premiership campaign was something that is clearly one thing that sits at the forefront of your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Every
right.
time you mention your experience with Collingwood.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's absolutely. Yeah, especially doing it in the first, pretty much the first 5 years of your career is a pretty big feat as well.
Yeah, it is, and we felt we had a really good team, and we were disappointed with 1988. We lost 2 finals to Carlton and Melbourne, and obviously we had a good blend of experience in Dakes and Shorey and Pants and Banksy. We recruited a couple of important players that I felt helped us structurally in Craig Kelly and Chris O'Down back, Stars up forward. Brian Taylor was a terrific player in 1990, even though he didn't get to the premiership team, but he helped us get to where we got to. And we had a lot of players around the footy that knew how to win it. The recruitment of Francis and Russell was telling. Roddy was a terrific player in the 90s, early 90s as a winger. It was either Pants or Brownie on the other side, so we had a combination of players through the middle of the ground that you had to find the ball and use it and make good decisions with it.
Yeah.
And we were a very good, close-knit team that really did a lot for each other and worked hard for each other.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I read that the core midfield had about 500 disposals between them in that 1990 season. So it shows how much of the ball you guys collected and like you said, how much he's worked for each other as well.
Yeah, Monkey and Jimmy Manson were also a part of that group as well, like as ruckman. And Monkey became an outstanding ruckman, fiercely competitive. And Jimmy gave us this X factor that we knew what we were always going to get from him, and that was 100% effort, 100% of the time. And he was just a terrific fella to play with. Shane Ward, across halfback, was so composed. Jamie Turner was a role player. Mick Gafer was hard to beat, irrespective of who he played on. So we had a number of players that done critical roles for the team. But you look back on that team now and you say the reason why we probably were successful in that 1990 campaign was because we had so many guys that were a team first player. It was all about the team, not about them.
Exactly.
That's what you need to do. Exactly
right. And that, like you said, team first player. Like you mentioned and going a bit off topic now, but you mentioned in your Twitter as well that the other day on Friday night against the Bombers that there were a lot of players that weren't putting their head over the ball or straight lining the ball like you said. Especially in the wet when it's a ground ball and stuff like that. And that team first mentality, I feel like, is something that we've been dropping these last couple of weeks with close losses to the Giants and then getting smashed by, well, not smashed, but pants by the Bombers as well on Friday night.
Yeah, it was disappointing, I reckon, from a set shot point of view. 2 weeks ago against GWS.
Yeah.
I just think it's inexcusable to get players 30, 25 metres, 35 metres directly in front. Young Callum Brown's instance not even getting the distance, and Chris May missing a set shot that was critical. Mason Cox in the last 2 weeks has hardly touched the ball as a key forward. And I understand in wet conditions, probably as a point of reference for your midfielders up the ground, you need a strong target in front of the footy.
Yeah.
But the question is he providing that? Is there trust within the players up the ground to go to him because he's not competing or not getting the ball as often as he should? Is he the answer? I thought against Essendon, it wasn't probably their ball movement. It wasn't much to do with their conversion. It was more about their will and their want for ground level hunt. I just felt they were pretty timid in the contest at times. I thought they were too reactive. It was critical ground balls that had to be won, and blokes were either going at it one-handed or taking short steps to go to it. And in wet footy, when it's there to be won, sometimes it's your turn to take it. Sometimes you've got to take your turn for the team, and you've got to go 100 mile an hour to get it.
Yeah, exactly
and the
right.
bruises and the bumps become inconsequential. It's about your method, how you approach the contest, and I just felt last Friday night, as I said publicly through social platform, there was too many guys I felt that picked and chose with their intent. And you won't win many games of footy in those situations. Not only does it demoralise your own teammates when you see a teammate not go, there'll be strong conversations internally, and rightfully so there should be.
Yeah.
But also there is an opportunity for the opposition to get a spike, knowing full well that they've got the upper hand in the contest, so why give the opposition an increase in their morale or spirit, and you demoralise your own by seeing teammates not doing what they should.
You made a point about mainly about the set shots as well before. I've got a note here that says, so since the footy's restart, so since round 2, we've had 8 quarters where we've scored 1 goal or less. And I think that's, against Richmond we scored a half of no goals, and obviously against Essendon the second and third quarter were no goals. It's just, it's a bit stupid to say, but you need to kick goals to win games, and you don't win a lot of games not kicking goals for 2 quarters in a match.
Yeah, it's a part of the game you have to get right. There's no question about that. You just can't rely on purely one side of the ball to get right, and that's defence.
Yeah.
And I just felt at times maybe in the coach's box they could have created some flair within their decisions about who plays where when the game's up for grabs. As good as Darcy Moore's been down back, even though there's no Howe in the team, if Mychok's struggling in front of the ball, maybe get Mychok back, who was recruited to Collingwood as a defender from Port Melbourne.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity for Darcy, who's really jumping at the footy magnificently at the moment, just gives you a different focal point in front of the footy. If he's not going to mark it, he won't get outmarked the way he's assaulting the ball in the air, and that brings you Callum Browns, and if Treloar's a small forward or resting forward, Pendlebury, I couldn't understand the decision. Probably after a half-time break, I would have thought he doesn't start in the centre square in the third quarter or the last quarter.
Yep.
I just think there's some decisions that I would have challenged if I was on match committee to say, well, maybe we try this to get us back into the game, because what we're doing at the moment's not working. Chris off halfback was turning the ball over at times. He dropped that easy mark, even though it was a difficult kick from Varco. You'd think he could have went into the centre square, maybe to negate Dylan Shields' influence, get Callum Brown into the game, get him around the centre square a bit more, load a ground player, wet ball, sits on the ground a lot more. That invites his strength into the play. But I just didn't think they did enough with the Magnets on the weekend, and maybe they come back to losing the game because of that. I actually agree. There was a lot of things that we could have done that we just didn't do, and you made a point of it. The Magnets around the ball. I want to talk about you said about our ball movement and stuff like that. You famously love a run and bounce. The 7 bounces in that game against Carlton. Everyone knows it. In 1994, those 7 bounces are actually more than Collingwood's bounced the ball this season. We've played 5 games, bounced the ball 6 times. Do you think that's as an area of concern, not running and carrying the ball? Not really, because it's hard for an individual nowadays to have space in front of you because of the opposition's frontal pressure, how they're squeezing the ground. So if you win the ball, say back a centre, barbed wire fence, probably 2 or 3 layers of it in front of you. So you're going to be running into that defensive structure from the opposition. So you're not going to have that grass to run into like we did back in our day.
Yeah, yep.
So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It's probably more about pulling the trigger. I know they want to play a kick mark game to our possess, and they do that pretty well against, say, the Tigers as a template in terms of game style and philosophy.
Yeah.
But I think at times they probably take it too far. They take it literally. I think there was opportunities to probably roll on your non-preferred side. And this is why skill level is important. To open up the ground, you can go back into the 45 rather than rolling out your right foot down the boundary line skinny and kicking long down the line to your target and inviting the opposition to come into play with contest. I just think too often we miss opportunities as creative mids, and that's why side bottom as an outside player is so critical to Collingwood, because he can wheel in left foot because he's so adept at it.
Exactly.
Or if he's on the other side of the ground, he can wheel on his right foot and come back inside and pull the trigger. But I just felt on the weekend, and probably previously in a couple of games Collingwood's played this year and even last year, we just don't play with that natural flair and natural dare. Have three-dimensional leading potential opportunities as forwards, as opposed to just going down the boundary line skinny. If you mark it, you mark it. But even that next entry into your forward line's skinny again, probably. If you get the ball back into the corridor, it just opens that game up, and I don't think Collingwood probably do that as well as they should.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a skill level of the team that they've got the conviction to do it. But when you're down by 2 or 3 goals, I prefer to take a risk and try to win the game as opposed to trying to get back into the game on the skinny entry.
Yeah, you mentioned the flair and stuff like that, and not playing that sort of game. I did notice that at one stage when we were up by 3 goals in that first quarter, we still tend to back the ball out and kick it backwards or chip it around like that kick and mark hand that you were talking about. I just feel like in a lot of my videos, I always mention that we never seem to put teams to the sword despite all the possession that we have, and I think that comes down to that kicking and marking, backwards kicking, we let the other team, the opposition, flood their defence, and with that slow build-up play, when we have all possession in the attack, we don't do anything with it, and then we allow other teams to take over.
Yeah, it's picking the time when to go is important. To outpossess the opposition is a form of defence nowadays. You've got the ball, they haven't. They can't score when you've got it. That type of mentality.
Yeah.
But I think it's important when you are outpossessing, you've got to take ground. We use the language U-shaped ball movement to get to the open side of the ground, so you're stretching the ground, you're getting width and length on the ground, so you're getting players to run selflessly to get chalk on their feet. That's probably all about if you can create corridor opportunity or pop space opportunity to kick the ball through and into, you'll serve your forward line better. But I don't think Collingwood go forward enough and at speed.
Yeah.
Because you can go through a really good defensive structure and over it, or you go around it. And at the moment, Collingwood are probably trying to go around it too often rather than through it and over it. And then if you can get over it, all of a sudden you'll see to Goey or Stevenson or an Elliott charging into the back space in your forward line and manufacturing goals of that nature. But at this moment in time, because of their slow build-up, as you said, there's times where they just have to kick down the line and rely on wide check or Cox, or if Grundy's in front of the ball, to compete strongly in the air and get numbers at the source of the contest. And if it's a ground ball, we win it at ground ball and try to chain it out with hands until we get that kick out the back. So there's a lot of improvement in Collingwood's game to come. I've got no doubt about that. But they get to Hawthorn this week. If they lose this game, they're certainly in the quicksand. It's a massive game this week. They can't afford to lose it.
Do you make a lot of? Would you make a lot of changes for you on the selection committee?
I don't know where certain players are at
in
terms of their rehab, how much grounding they've had. So on face value, it's easy to throw hand grenades, I suppose. But on the back of what I witnessed the last couple of weeks, I reckon there'd be some nervous footballers who they think probably are senior players, but Hoskin Elliott's been disappointing the last 2 weeks, not only from his talent that he's got and his performance level, they aren't marrying up, plus his appetite for the contest, I don't reckon it's been where it should be in the last 2 weeks when the game's up for grabs. Let's face it, the Hawthorn this week will bring as much pressure as what they've witnessed against GWS and Essendon, if not more.
Definitely.
Jamie Elliott's been a disappointment. His form's fluctuated up and down, but we know he's a renowned goal kicker, something that are at a premium at the moment, so do you take a risk on him, leaving him out of the team? Tom Phillips, I'd probably leave him as a winger and just let him run the tram tracks up and down the ground rather than trying to put him as a part of your front six.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. It's a bit weird. One of our best runners in the team, they got him as half forward and Hoskin Elliott on the wing, which is a bit weird.
Yeah. So, little things like that, and I understand that they're trying to probably bring players into the game if they're quiet nights, just like I mentioned before, but sometimes your strength of your team is Tom Phillips between the arcs. Side bottom, historically, those two, when they're running that outside pattern up and down the ground, not only they get in to support their defence, but also if we win it in their back half, based on the tram tracks they lead it, they run, it gives us an opportunity to kickstart our offence on the way back out. And when Sidebottom wasn't there the other night, I reckon we lost a lot of shape coming out of defence.
Yeah.
Because Sidey runs those patterns really well, and he's an outlet player for us on a number of occasions, and he does it magnificently, but he wasn't there. And I suppose you got to ask yourself your question, how long you persevere with Mason Cox. He's been rushed into the team. He hasn't had much continuity. Is that a reason as to why they'll go with him again, or do you make a statement? Do you bring in a young Kelly, or do you bring in Cameron back into the team? Do you bring in Magden, play him down back to force Darcy more forward? A lot of things will be going through their minds. As a match committee, I would have thought at this moment.
Yeah.
How far is Levi Greenwood away? He's a great opportunity for him to get back into the team, because I think Collingwood are a much better balanced midfield if he's running through the midfield as a tagger. I thought the other night they were all duck, no dinner. Pendles, Adam Treloar, Taylor, all hunting the footy, but when Essendon won it, I didn't see a lot of immediate referencing.
Yep.
The defensive switch didn't go on, and we got exposed in back end because of it. Jake Stringer and Tipperwoody were dangerous in front of the ball for sure.
Yeah, definitely. No, you glad that you brought up Kelly. I've got a question here from a fan that said, out of all current young talent on the Pies list, who would you like to see be given more opportunity at AFL level? Would that be Kelly? He's been kicking goals in the practice matches and looking like a real forward.
Yeah, well, at some stage they'll try him. Now, I don't 100% know exactly his capabilities without seeing him a lot. You can read articles and you can watch a bit of vision. Until you see him perform at a high level, it's hard to get a gauge whether he will cut the mustard. You'd think Tyler Brand will go back and have a go at reserve level. Do they need a bit more bounce and energy out of half-back? Maybe Kalona could be looked at. Does Noble go back into the team to play that small defensive role, considering Hawthorn have got a couple of players like a Puoplo that he could match up against there? So they've got some decisions to make at the selection table. It's just about whether or not they think, say, young Kelly, for example, is going to give us something we haven't got. And at this moment, we need a competitive forward, because, for example, Jaden Stevenson, who's starting the games magnificently, and that's generally when he's the deepest forward.
Yeah. And
that's on the back of Degoe usually starting in the centre bounce. So when Degoe goes forward, he goes to the goal square. Then all of a sudden, Jaden Stevenson finds himself high up the ground. On the back of him being high up the ground, he goes into more numbers, and that's where you don't see him for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So he's got to learn to say, well, to be a part of this team and as a contributor, he's got to get around the action more and understand that when you're around the action more, there's more physicality because there's more bodies around. But at this moment in time, Jaden's not been a part of that. And it's a learning part of his game that he's got to get better at, because you can't just rely on one string to your bow. It's been a deep forward, all the space in front of you. I can use my speed to get into that space. Then I can rely on my teammates to hit me and I'll go back and kick a goal. But at this moment in time, when Collingwood restructure because of the Goey or even a Mason Cox who fatigues goes to the goal square deep, Jaden has to come up the ground to restructure Collingwood's forward line and play another role. But he just doesn't impact the game when he does that.
We noticed that a lot last year as well. Before his ban, they played him higher up the ground and he wasn't getting much of the ball. But when they did put him back deeper into that goal score, like you said, that's when obviously he does his most sort of damage. But also with the goalie, obviously we know he's been a little bit out of form. But as a midfielder, do you prefer him in between the arcs, or do you prefer him as a deep forward where he does his most damage?
I'd probably be 60-40 starting in forward. I think he can influence a game as a midfielder, but he's still got some work to do in relation to his ball use, decision making around the contest. There's no one known he's a Pendlebury where he's got time and space on the ball. Generally, Pendles makes the right decision.
Yep.
Whereas Jordan's more a ball at a gate, crash bash, win it, surge forward, kick it forward. And as you found the other night, there wasn't many times when he did come out of the midfield. He either got tackled first one of the match, or there's other times and examples where he didn't hit target regularly enough as a midfielder, as a premium midfielder. And that's one thing Collingwood's mids to forwards connection hasn't been great, and they still have to improve on that. And that comes down to decision making and the skill level to execute that decision. So they've got some work to do in that part of the ground. They've tried to use Jamie Elliott as a midfielder. I don't reckon he is a midfielder. I don't think he's a 360-degree player. I think he's a deep forward as well, who's a marking forward for his inches, and that's the reason why he probably is inconsistent with his performances, because a person of his height, you go back to Lee Matthews, I suppose, who was a regular goal kicker when he became the resting forward at Hawthorn way back in the 70s and early 80s. He could hit the scoreboard as a crumbing player, but also a marking player. And Jamie's he's not doing it regularly enough for the talent that he's got. And I know he's had some interruptions over the last 3 or 4 years, but at the end of the day, he's out there, and once you're out there, there's no excuses.
Exactly right. Once you're out there, it's all systems go. Look, man, I'll just ask you one more question, which I've had a couple of people ask. What current player on the list reminds you most of yourself?
I'd say Pendlebury. Just the ability to make good decisions, have poise with the ball, not give it up.
Yeah.
Can probably, due to weight of numbers and how you use it, can influence a game.
Yep.
Just by ball use, having time with the ball, seeing things that other players don't see.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on kick-starting your offence. So when you see, Pendlebury as a young player first starting, there was a lot of comparisons between him and Thomas. And a lot of people were in Daisy Thomas's corner. I remember saying it on radio when I was working on radio that Pendlebury was the player for me that would be, 10, 12, 13-year player, I thought, at that stage. He'd be more consistent, because I just saw things in his game that reminded me a lot of the good players that I watched growing up, that not only would they win it, he had time with it, he made good decisions, you knew he was going to get a bit thicker in the body, which was going to help him. Just great size, you could see him run the right patterns, you knew he was clean. You got to be a good ball handler once you're a midfielder. You don't fumble. He certainly doesn't do that. Yeah. And probably they're the attributes.
No, that's amazing. Look, Mick, I'll leave it there, mate. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it's going to mean a lot to Collingwood fans to hear one of the legends speak about the current team and how we're travelling and stuff. So again, thank you. I appreciate it so much, mate.
Good on you, Luke.
See you, mate.
Take care.
Cheers.
Look after
Bye.
yourself.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.